Well, good evening, everyone. And I would like to call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, May the 3rd. There are no additions to the agenda. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? So May 1st to 7th marks Emergency Preparedness Week. Emergencies can happen anytime and without warning. I would encourage all residents to prepare themselves, and it's as easy as making a 72-hour emergency kit. Information as to how to best prepare yourself can be found at getprepared.gc.ca and our own social media this week. This week also marks the Canadian Mental Health Association's Mental Health Week. Over the past 2 years, I have encouraged everyone around this horseshoe, as well as our residents, to be mindful of their personal mental health, as well as looking out for signs of strain and stress in family and friends. That can be a very difficult thing to do. This year's theme of Mental Health Week is empathy. What is empathy? Well, it is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. How does one do that? By listening and refusing to judge. Sometimes we think we know it all and know what someone else is going through and what is best for someone else. Most often, as much as we tell ourselves that our concern is coming from a place of care, it is also coming from a place of judgment. The CMHA's tagline for this year's Mental Health Week is #GetRealAboutHowToHelp. Before you weigh in, tune in. If someone close to you is struggling, hold their hand and listen to them. And as always, familiarize yourself with crisis supports in our community. We do not have to go into closed session tonight, and we don't have a public meeting, but we do have a couple of delegations tonight. So the first one that's joining us is Derek Richmond, and he is the Ontario Region Campaign Coordinator for CUPE with Canada Post. And I believe that he is just coming on screen now. There he is. And Derek, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to have you with us tonight. I'm going to welcome you, and I'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good day, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Derek Richmond, and I'm the Ontario Region Coordinator for the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to Council on expanding service and protecting public post offices. Our Delivering Community Power campaign reimagines our post office to be the hub for rural communities. Using our post office as a community hub that would provide much needed services that are lacking in rural Canada. The community hub model is currently being done in 2 Indigenous communities. These hubs have provided space for nonprofit organizations, an Office Depot kiosk with resources like broadband internet, printers, scanners, photocopiers, so the community like youth, seniors can utilize these resources. These hubs could also provide much needed financial services. Currently, there is a pilot project to provide small loans through Canada Post, and it must be extended to meet the needs of rural residents that don't have easy access to financial services. Other services Canada Post could provide at a community hub is hunting and fishing licenses, Space for Service Ontario, tourist information, library vending machines, space for farmers market and local art. Canada Post has approximately 7,000 locations that could be retrofitted with solar panels and create a secure coast-to-coast network of charging stations. This public charging network would lead to additional tourism to rural Ontario for those who own electric vehicles. Canada Post can also become a leader in providing services to seniors through an elder check-in program. COVID lockdowns have taught us that seniors are the most vulnerable during the lockdown, and a letter carrier check-in program can assist seniors that are shut in and provide additional security for seniors to live independently. Canada Post can provide delivery of groceries and medication to seniors that have a difficult time navigating through COVID as well. Canada Post must lead the way in a carbon-free post office. Currently, Canada Post has approximately 20,000 vehicles on the road daily, and converting the fleet to Canadian manufactured electric vehicles needs to be the priority to meet 2035 target emissions. Canada Post must become a leader for a carbon-free delivery. To this date, close to 1,000 municipalities supporting resolutions have been submitted to the federal government on service expansion and postal banking. There are many innovative and forward-thinking ideas for a post-COVID recovery to improve service at Canada Post for rural communities and protect good-paying jobs. This will enhance our national infrastructure, social communities, and strengthen economic viability of rural communities across Canada. But we still need municipalities like the township of Lucan to continue to put pressure on the federal government to ensure rural municipalities receive the service they deserve from their public post office. On behalf of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, we ask the township of Lucan endorse the Delivering Community Power Resolution to support, retain, enhance, and expand rural post offices. Thank you for your time and support. I'm willing to answer any questions or concerns council may have.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Derek. We certainly appreciate the message that you've shared with us. Is there any questions or comment from anyone on council? Councillor Westman.
Hello there. I'm a resident of the village of Granton, and we are very grateful to have our rural post office there in Granton. It's been family operated for a very long time and has recently changed its designation from postmaster provided premises to something else, I assume. But there's obviously always ongoing concern that some of the smaller rural post offices may be, phased out in favor of the super boxes and centralizing to the Lucan post office perhaps. Do you have any idea of what the plan going forward is for that sort of thing, or?
I don't, unless it's protected under the moratorium, the federal government moratorium. As a protected post offices, we can save it. They cannot relocate it. Same with our collective agreement. We have about 500 in our collective agreement that can't be moved and touched. But I think expanding services in these rural community in these rural post offices makes a better solution to keep more of an argument to keep the post office there.
Any other questions or comment? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you can give me two reasons why the federal government doesn't want to enhance your services. If you just give me two reasons why you got to advocate for this.
2 reasons. That's a good question. 2 reasons why they don't. I don't have 2 reasons why they don't. I've been working for this for 7 years, and we're slowly starting to get bits and pieces. Like, we're getting financial services now into the post office, and we're starting to get community hubs. I don't know what the pressure is behind the federal government slowly bringing these in through Canada Post. I guess my criticism would be it's too slow, and my criticism would be that there's not enough support for rural communities.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, Derek, and we'll take your letter of request and we will discuss that later, okay?
Thank you very much, everyone.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Okay, our next presenter is a familiar face to council. Stuart Finlater is joining us again. And this is, of course, with regards to the OPA number 10 that we have been discussing over the last number of months. So Stuart is connecting. Oh, I see Dan is connecting as well. That's great. But Stuart's on camera, he's joined us, so welcome, Stuart, good to see you again, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have provided council with a fairly, I think, self-explanatory report dealing with the OPA 10 that we've been dealing with for the last year or so. At the last meeting that we had, 2 meetings ago, council directed staff to have a look at, and myself to have a look at moving lands that were to be added through that OPA process from the east to the west side of the village. We came back on the 19th of April with a suggested mapping that would accomplish that direction from council. And at that meeting, we did indicate that it would be appropriate to have a second public meeting. Part of the reason for that, quite honestly, was the belief that the county, as the approval authority, was going to require a second public meeting due to that change. I subsequently had a meeting with Dirk Vanderwerth from the county, and he indicated that, well, you know, he would err on the side of caution and likely, if it was his call, would have a second public meeting, that there was no requirement to do so, which clearly I understood that from the beginning. But so I had that discussion. After I had a discussion with Dirk, I had a discussion with Ron Raymer, and Ron suggested that I bring a report forward advising council that there's absolutely no requirement to have another public meeting. The Planning Act only requires one public meeting, which we had back in November. And so it's certainly council's call as to whether or not you wish to have a second public meeting. If you do, the report outlines what the process would be. And if you do not, then we would simply finalize the OPA number 10, bring it back to a subsequent meeting of council, and council would adopt that, and it would be forwarded on to the county. And the county, as the approval authority, would ultimately decide whether or not the amendment would be approved as submitted or approved with some amendments. I also had a discussion with Mr. Raymer today about the process that you need to follow if you do not want to have a public meeting, which I'm sure Ron can explain to you, but it requires a notice of motion and so on. So that's really all I've got to say, Your Worship, unless anybody has any further questions.
Okay, appreciate that, Stuart, for the update. Any comments from council? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess for Dan or for Stuart, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So we were told that we were to have a public meeting. It was required by the county. And now I'm just seeking clarification. So we don't need to have one at this point. We fulfilled all of that obligation. Is that correct? Do I understand this correctly?
Through Your Worship, yes, I don't, I'm getting some feedback here. Sorry, I don't think that it was stated that the county required us to have another public meeting. It was my understanding that the county would like to have another public meeting. Clearly, the Planning Act only requires an open house and a public meeting. If you wish to have additional meetings, you can do so. But the county, as I said, when I had a meeting with Dirk, confirmed that that's council's call. If you do not wish to have a further public meeting, you're not required to do so. So the answer to your question is yes, you fulfilled all of the requirements that you need to fulfill.
Right. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Manders.
No, I just want to let everyone know it's my intent to submit to the clerk a notice of motion at the May 17th meeting to reconsider last meeting's motion where instructions were given to staff to make preparations for a public meeting. I'd like to have that rescinded, and I am going to make the notice of motion at the next meeting. I want everyone to be aware of that. So, as I do not believe it's needed. Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Councillor Hodgin.
Thank you. I just want to confirm, like with a bit of calendar math, the dates, I guess, between if we do a public meeting or if we don't do a public meeting. If we were to go down the route of doing a public meeting, I assume that the OPA is pretty much would be ready to post for public review. And then there's 20 days. So that would take us to end of May. And then we'd have the public meeting June 7th, and then we'd have a vote to approve the OPA or pass the OPA on the 21st. Is that correct? Maybe to Dan or Stuart?
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, the OPA, we're still finalizing some mapping, but I expect that can be done shortly. Yeah, so once we get the OPA document finalized, it would be provided to Ron and staff at Lucan Biddulph, and then they would count out the 20 days, set a date for the next public meeting. Council will deal with it, and if they adopt it, it would be sent off to the county for county's consideration and approval. The county is also going to circulate it again to the provincial ministries and agencies. That's what Dirk has indicated to me. Before he makes a final decision, or before he makes his final recommendation to county council as to how he recommends we proceed with the amendment.
Thanks. Just follow up. Yeah, I'm not opposed to an additional public meeting. I'm hearing some comments or concerns from the county planners where they would err on the side of caution. So I think it's not going to bog down our process too much to do that. So that would be my thoughts on that, and it would just be consistent with our resolution from the past council meeting. And I do think it's a significant enough change that it may warrant some feedback from property owners. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hodgins. Any other questions or comment from council on that? Deputy Mayor Manders.
I guess just clarity on Councillor Hodgins' timeline. Does everybody, or does if Stuart or Dan want to comment on that, on those? Would that be a correct timeline? And actually, it was a public meeting, yeah. And I do want to add that my reasoning isn't to expedite this and get it done. It's to not waste staff's time and public time. And I think back to that meeting we had, unfortunately, when we didn't have our audio working, and if we all reflect at that meeting what went around the horseshoe after again public meeting and landowners input and everything else, it was a very overwhelming of what all of council wanted. So that's, I'm asking the question about the timeline, and I almost want to take that back, because that's not my reasoning. It's not to waste more time.
Okay, but just, I guess, on that, just Stuart, Councillor Hodgins did outline what the timeline would be if we went with a public meeting, and I guess, was his timeline correct? So it would be that second meeting in June that it would be passed.
Your worship, I don't have your meeting schedule in front of me, so I'm not, maybe Ron might be able to answer that better. I don't know exactly what your schedule is. I see Dan's got his hand up. Maybe he's better to answer that than me, your worship.
Yeah, through the chair to council. So what I would say is, based on the legislative requirements, we are required to post the amendment so the public can review it 20 days in advance of a meeting. The amendment generally is complete at this point. It's just those small mapping things that we're just finalizing. So I see no reason why you wouldn't be able to have the public meeting on June 7th and then bring back to vote at the second meeting in June.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that, Dan. What's that? Oh, sorry. I thought you were mumbling about the sound. Any other comments or questions? So I guess at this time, I would just ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report that Stuart presented for information. And then we'll look to having a more fruitful discussion on this then, I guess, the next meeting, right? What?
I didn't know if, it says here at the bottom, staff will implement whatever direction council decides. I didn't know if if Councillor Hodgins was going to make a motion, but I don't know if I'm correct in what I'm saying. that he would make a motion, then to see if he gets a seconder and it passes.
Oh, for a public meeting.
Yeah, that's all.
Public meeting.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just a point of clarification. So the discussion as to whether the motion does get rescinded or not happens at the next meeting when your motion to reconsider gets on the table. So that motion can either be passed. If it gets passed, then it's reconsidered. But if it's not, then we're back to the public meeting. So if that, does that make sense? Yep.
Okay, no, so we still just need a mover and a seconder to accept the report for information. Okay, Councillor Regan, and a seconder, Councillor Westman. All opposed? Or, I mean, all in favor? Forgot, I mean, we're in person, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Stuart. And Dan, are you hanging on in the background until planning, or are you done?
Yep, I'll be around for a few things.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and then back to the QP presentation. I missed the motion that I need a mover and a seconder to receive the request for support from QP, and then I didn't know if there was any discussion that council wanted to have on that request. But I would ask for a mover and a seconder just to receive the support from QP. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor, and that's carried. And then we can leave it to councillors' comments if anybody wants to speak to the request, okay? Moving on to the minutes. And we have in front of us the meeting minutes from April the 19th. And if nothing needed to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the meetings of April 19th as circulated. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. Business arising. The development charges have been added. And nothing else has. I didn't know if council wanted to speak to any of those, or if anything from the last set of meeting minutes needed to be added to business arising. Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks. I was just going to ask whether we remove the pool renovation item moving forward after tonight's item.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the pool renovation project is going to be discussed tonight under Parks and Recreation. So once that, then it comes off.
Then moving on to correspondence, there was a lot of correspondence that was received over the last couple weeks. And there's been nothing that has been specifically pulled by staff. Did council have any items that they wanted to speak to? So I had a couple. The first one was with regards to the VON request for VON week in coming up the middle of May. That's item number 3. And they have requested that we make a proclamation, we fly the flag, we light it up, light the building up, but we share on our social media, which I think we can do, is share our social media. But I wanted to talk, and maybe this is for something, again, doesn't have to be formalized necessarily in the near future, but maybe it's something for next term of council to think about. Because quite often we get a number of requests with regards to proclamations. And it is a slippery slope because once you say yes to one organization, it's fairly difficult then to say no to others, and how do you pick and choose? So I didn't know if staff had any advice going forward, or if maybe we can ask for a staff report. And as I say, this could be something for the new term of council, but I'm just putting it out there for comment.
So through you, Madam Mayor, what we maybe can do as staff is to make note of that. And, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the communications policy and what that would look like, that this could maybe work itself into that type of a policy. Because I do agree, we do get a lot of requests to declare this kind of week and that kind of week. And they're all good causes. They are absolutely all good causes. But we can't be everything for everybody, because you kind of, if everything is a different week, it kind of waters down the meaning of each one of those, which is not, I don't think that's the goal of either, any of these requests. So I think at this point, if we just kind of keep it in our back of our mind, and like you said, for the new council, when we look at a communications policy, maybe we can address that type of a thing, and what's appropriate, and how to get the point across that they're requesting without sort of, I guess, relegating it to, you know, this is the 51st time we've delegated or declared a week of something, so, okay.
No, I appreciate that. With that in mind, though, I'm hoping that somebody can, and I mean, I can as well, but respond back to the VON. If we could at least share on our social media, the VON, they did have an office in Lucan for years and years and years. Meals on Wheels are delivered. I think it would be appropriate that week to at least share on our social media the importance of that organization. So then the next one I have on my list is number 7, which is a new communication tool from the county, and it's Middlesex County Council Highlights. So the county has recently undertaken a new communications strategy and looking at how to enhance our communications with not only our residents, but our partner municipalities. And so this is a new document that will come out after each council meeting. It's going to be shared with the clerks, and then it will always appear in our correspondence. So certainly, if there's anything in those highlights that catch your eye, this would be the time to discuss it. But it's also a good way of highlighting what's going on at the county for our residents as well. And then the last one I had was number 22. Yeah, number 22. And this was a resolution from the Township of Mulmar, and it has to do with the More Homes for Everyone Act. And at our last council meeting, Dirk Vanderwerth, the senior planner, our director of planning, he had made a presentation to county council about Bill 109, and there is a lot in that bill that is going to impact our community and municipalities across the province. And I had suggested to Ron that maybe we ask Dirk to come to make the presentation. My understanding that Dan is going to join us at the next council meeting and essentially give a presentation on that act. So with that in mind, maybe after I'd like this item to maybe appear in next round of correspondence as well, or somewhere, because it might be something that after we hear from Dan and learn more about the act and the impact on everything, that we might consider something, a resolution at that time. So if we can include that in the next round of communications, that would be great. And then if there's nothing else, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive those items of correspondence for information purposes. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that is carried. On to committee reports. Blue Water.
Yeah, nothing, thanks.
CEDC.
No update, thank you.
Okay. Lake Huron, nothing. We have a meeting coming up in June, I think, yes. Fire boards, nothing. ABCA and Upper Thames. Councillor.
All right, a couple things, not a lot to report, but there's a few things that were kind of noteworthy. Sabo Bayfield, these are kind of an interesting thing where we lean into the the site alteration bylaw that I proposed going forward. We have in both watersheds issues with property owners doing work without permits, and some to the extent that are quite substantial. So both conservation authorities are working with their member municipalities to partner when it comes to enforcement and direction and permitting, things like that. So that continues to be an ongoing thing. Spring tree planting is a big thing, and I know that we have really worked hard at that. Thank you to Paul Smith and his team for doing some tree planting there. The Sauble Bayfield is doing butternut tree planting because they are species at risk in this area. There used to be lots of them, and they've been pretty much marginalized at this point as a species. So we're encouraging landowners to reach out to the Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority and get their butternut seedlings and start planting them. They're a very nice hardwood tree. They present a nice canopy, and they do produce nuts, so they help to feed wildlife. Financially, the both authorities are working hard to keep their finances in order, and with the change in the Conservation Act and the amount of money that we receive from the province, we certainly are working very diligently with our staff to make sure that we are able to continue funding not only the mandatory programs, but some of the other programs that are valuable to the communities that we serve. One thing that I thought was really kind of a great thing is that our board chair for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, Alan Dale, has been appointed to Conservation Ontario as a vice chair. And that is a huge deal, and congratulations to Alan. He's a tremendous guy. I know that he's going to bring our voice very strong to the Conservation Ontario. So getting on to the site alteration bylaw subject, it was kind of interesting to learn that of our member municipalities, about half have site alteration bylaws in place, and they are very helpful to the Conservation Authority and to the municipalities to help kind of maintain consistency across the board so that there isn't situations where landowners are doing significant fill, getting rid of wetlands, draining protected wetlands without going through the permitting process and getting engineering and direction from the conservation authorities and the municipalities. So these are kind of important tools to have in place. And so we can expect from the Upper Thames, they'll be reaching out to the member municipalities to garner support in that. And I've advised them that we're already in the process. We have a draft that we're working on. Thames Centre is also. I had the opportunity to meet with the mayor during Good Roads, and we had some discussion, and I sent her a copy of the draft that we're working on, and they are in the process of approving that for their municipality as well. So it's kind of interesting where a simple conversation starts a movement, and I'm very, very proud that we were able to start from that conversation, and now we have our member municipalities are all working together with the Conservation Authority to help build that toolbox. So yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, the other thing is source water protection, and we've been assured that the province will continue to provide funding for source water protection, and that's going to be a big one for all the municipalities. That would, if that funding was removed, it would significantly impact our rates that we pay, and it would certainly impact our ratepayers in the community. So yeah, so that's our two conservation boards. That's what I've got for you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Any questions for Alex on that? Councillor Regan.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor Westman a question. Councillor, so when you said about property owners doing work on their property that's not permitted, I'm just curious, like what are they doing?
Well, to give an example, in one of our neighboring municipalities, a landowner trucked in literally 150 to 200 dump truck loads of dirt or soil that they got from some housing developments in the London area, brought them in, filled in a wetland, filled in a small water course, and altered the very level of the property. And in doing so, that can have a number of impacts, not the least of which eliminating wetlands where there's, obviously the wetlands are there and supporting a lot of species, and some of them are at risk. But it can change the dynamics of water flow, surface water flow, and wetlands exist for a reason. And they're there as a filter, and they're also there as a habitat. So for landowners to come in and do that, there has to be some kind of direction and guidance. It cannot just be something they just do. And because it can have an impact down the watershed, it can have an impact up the watershed. And, it's interesting to see the kind of impact that filling in a 2 or 3 acre bog area can have downriver. And because there's a very delicate balance in some of these ecosystems. So with a site alteration bylaw in place, there would be a process that they would have to follow where they would have to ensure that they are not having a negative impact on protected wetlands. And that's the big part of it, is that some of these wetlands are protected under law, and paying a fine after the fact really doesn't do a thing for the species that have been eliminated due to that, and also can have an impact on the neighbors. And that's a big part of it. We've had issues here in Lucan Biddulph where, some fill-in has been done, and then we have an issue with a neighboring property having water that they never had before, standing water. So, we want to be able to provide tools for the municipality and the Conservation Authority that can help to mitigate that problem. And that's kind of where this bylaw comes in, is it provides those tools so that it's not just a dump and go kind of process, that there is a step-by-step. And, you're going to have folks like Jeff or Dan Fitzgerald or people from the county involved that are going to be saying, okay, well, hold on, before you do this, you have to ensure this. And that's as simple as that. So,
Okay.
right?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thanks for that, Alex. Parks and Recreation, there's a set of draft minutes from April 6th meeting. Paul, I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to add to that?
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Currently at this moment, no. We discussed a lot of these at the last meeting, but we did not have the minutes before you. But I would open up to council now that you've seen the minutes. If you do have any additional questions, please ask. Beyond that, the next meeting has been rescheduled to May 19th at 6 p.m.
Okay, any questions on that? Councillor Regan.
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Paul, just on that one note on 7.6 to Trails and Connectivity Committee, is there any movement on that?
Yes, I've already drafted up some draft terms of reference, but I believe the whole purpose is to have it align with the new term of council. So I think before the new term of council, we'll be bringing that forward for this council to review and help guide staff how to set up that committee, how council would like to see that committee look and its function, and then the plan would be to have it appointed for the new term of council if that's what council wishes to continue that way.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anything else for Paul? Okay, thanks for that. Moving on to staff reports. Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first the report I have before council tonight is in regards to a request from the St. James Cemetery Board to fund a replacement headstone for Mr. Green Thurman. Give you a little bit of background, thanks to Tom McLaughlin's research. Mr. Green Thurman was born into slavery October 7th, 1827 in Union, Missouri, and is now buried at the St. James Cemetery in Clandeboye. And we believe this is the last known slave to be from or buried in this area. So it's quite historical. It's a very historical figure, and obviously the stone is in disrepair. It's in need of replacement, and the St. James Cemetery Board is, I think it's a fair statement to say they're struggling to maintain their their financial viability. So they have asked for council's assistance in maintaining the dignity of this person's headstone. And I won't go too far into the background of Mr. Thurman, but the impact to budget, we're talking about $2,500 plus HST, which I think was very reasonable. I didn't, when I first received the request, there was no price attached to it, and I thought it was going to be a lot more than this, but I was pleasantly surprised at the dollar amount. So it's not, it's not a great deal of money, but it is significant enough, and it does need to, it does require council approval.
Thank you for that, Ron. Discussion on the report and the request in front of us. Councillor Westman.
I mean, since I was a kid, I've been curious and interested in our story, the Lucan Biddulph story, and as I learned about the Wilberforce settlement and the different families that helped build this community, it really shook me because, the stories that they had to tell could fill a million books. There's amazing stories to be told, and we've commemorated that with a mural and with our museum. We have a lot of things to be proud of here. I mean, we always hear about the Donnelly story, and but I think the greater history that we have here is in the stories about Peter Butler III and this gentleman here. I'm absolutely in support of contributing to this. It's the least we can do for someone that helped build our community, really, it is. And, it's a proud story for us to tell as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westman. Any other comments or comments from council on this? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, mine is just a comment. I have no issue with it. It's just, I think, I think future council, and we need to be aware of, there'd be a lot of people with a lot of great history that, will need their headstones potentially, fixed or repaired. And, being in the two cemeteries, there certainly is a lot. And I certainly, it's easy to speak to this one of the reasoning why, but I think we'd be in a difficult spot to speak to a reason why we wouldn't if presented. And again, we're not using our money. I just, from budgetary standpoint, I mean, you could get 10 of these requests from St. Pat's and St. James. I know my relative, we had the same idea, and we went to New Hamburg, got a brass plaque so that those names could be just put on that tombstone that was fading and couldn't be recognized, the names, and for $250, they're able to be, probably seen for the next 50, 80 years. So again, it's not about not, I think we need to be careful. I don't know if we should even use this out of our donation line, and people come for more donations. We can speak to what we used it for, and that was, what we did with the donation line. But again, there could be a lot of these requests. I think we just need to be careful, that's all.
I guess to that point, I did have the question as where, if we were to go forward and honor with the request, where would the money come from? And I'm in agreement with the Deputy Mayor that I think the donation line would be the line, but I didn't know if staff had another.
To answer your question, Madam Mayor, yes, the money would come out of the donation line item budget. I just wanted maybe 2 points of clarification there. I've been here for 31 years. This is the first time we've ever got a request like this, so hopefully it'll be another 31 years before you get another one. The second point is, we are the very rare municipality, and I must say that I'm very happy that we are not responsible for any cemeteries at this point in time. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's very rare to find a municipality that is not responsible for a cemetery. So we are fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, thank you that was my other note, because I was going to say we have three cemeteries in our municipality, and we're not responsible for one of them. So, Councillor Westman.
I think technically we have 4, because on the Corsi line, at the corner of the Corsi line, is the Butler Cemetery. And while it's probably not regulated under provincial legislation, it's still one of the cemeteries in our community, and it is cared for by the Butler family, and it's quite eye-opening. I've had the opportunity to go up there and poke around and look at the stones, and it's pretty amazing, and there's stories there too, right? So, but yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? So with that, the motion in front of us is to receive the report from the CAO for information and to provide direction. So I would look to a member of council to make that motion with whatever direction to get the motion on the floor. Councillor Westman.
I would make the motion that we honor the request by drawing monies from the donation line to cover the cost of this headstone.
Okay, so any discussion on that? And you seconded it, Councillor Regan. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else, Ron? Building and bylaw, we do actually have a report, and Arnie Marsman is joining us via Zoom. There he is. Can you hear me, Arnie?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, so it's great to see you. And I will turn it over to you, and hopefully next time you come visit us, it'll be in person.
I'm certain, thank you. I'm certain that I will be there in person next time. So I'm here today just to briefly provide you with a first quarter report. I'd like to get back into the routine of bringing reports to council quarterly. Unfortunately, we did not get a first quarter report last year, in which unfortunately, I'm not able to provide you a comparator numbers of last year's first quarter to this year's, but I can say this year's numbers are a continuation of last year's building boom that we've seen. We are, I would say, well ahead of where I believe we were last year with our 27 new dwellings been created in the first quarter, plus an apartment building. And last year, our total new dwellings was 79. So we're well a third of the way to last year's total. And again, it's similar to last year. It's a great mix of densities. So again, something to be proud of as a municipality. I'm here to provide any answers, any questions with regards to the report, though, and I'll just leave it to that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Any questions on the data that Arnie has shared with us? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Arnie. I guess just a comment to start. I like how you said, it's an impressive mix of densities, and you just made a note of that as well. It's great to see that diversification of housing stock through the apartment building, townhouse units and semi-detached homes, as well as single-family homes. So I think that's great to see those numbers, and it may help us with housing affordability, having different options. So just a question. My first question, how are the construction values determined in Table 1?
Sure. And through the mayor, construction values, we receive an estimate with every building permit. A builder provides an estimated cost of construction, and then staff will do a comparator ourselves and make sure that it's a reasonable number that they provide to us. And then what you see there is just a cumulative number for the starts.
Okay, thank you. And just the second quick question. In Table 2, where you outline the permit fees and the development charges collected, perhaps a question to staff. When are these DCs collected? Is it at the time of issuance of building permit?
Yes, through the mayor, it is collected at building permit time.
Okay, thanks, Arnie.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Arnie while we've got him? Okay, Thanks very much for joining us, Arnie. If I can get a mover and a seconder to receive his report BD-02-2022 for information. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
On to finance. Catherine, you're going to speak to us about our surplus.
Thank you. So,
It's always a good thing to be talking about.
yeah, a little bit of good news, we hope. But yeah, so this report is just in regards to their 2021 financials. So as we're going through finishing up the audit and finalizing the numbers from 2021, there is right now an anticipated surplus in the neighborhood of $90,000. So in order to finish off the financial statements for 2021, I just need council's direction on where best to put that. In the past, we've used, put it to different reserves, but recently we've used the tax stabilization reserve. And in other conversations we had, we felt that the balance in that reserve is healthy. So my recommendation is to put any reserve we have in 2021 into the road construction reserve, just considering there's a lot of infrastructure projects that have to happen in the next little while, and we know the costs of those have gone up. I did include as an attachment where our anticipated reserve balances are for the end of 2021 and where we might sit at the end of 2022, just so you can have a look at that and make sure that's some of your options there. Keep in mind that we just need to put this in the reserve so we can finish the statements, but you always have the option to move money around in some of those reserves. It's like your savings accounts. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Questions, comments about the direction for our hopeful surplus for 2021? Okay. All right. So with that, I guess I would ask for a mover and a seconder. Catherine's recommendation is that council direct to receive report number FIN-06-2022 for information, and that council direct the treasurer to allocate the 2021 surplus to the road construction reserve. Councillor Westman is moving it, a seconder with Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Catherine. Did you have anything else?
Just, we have the tax rate bylaw at the end of the council meeting just want to mention that. So that's just to finalize the rates for 2022. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, on to planning, and Dan is still with us, and we have in front of us tonight a report regarding a conditional site plan approval for 315 Main Street, and this is for, of course, the commercial development to the west of us. So with this, I will ask Dan to speak to it.
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor, and to all members of council tonight. So I'm here to present a report which does seek council approval of a conditional site plan agreement or conditional approval for site plan for a property that's located at 315 Main Street in Lucan. And I'm going to share my screen because pictures are better than words in most instances. What we have here is a commercial development. It is located on the northwesternmost edge of the settlement boundary of Lucan on the general south side of Richmond and Maine, or Highway 4. So this site was subject to a previous consent as well as zoning bylaw amendment application, which was completed in 2020. And now is subject to what we see here as a site plan approval application. So staff have worked constructively with the developer as well as their consultants to get to a point now where we feel we're generally in acceptance with what is being proposed. And really at this point, we're only working through some off-site details for an extension of services for the sanitary and water down Main Street, which is subject to ministry approval. So with that said, we are comfortable with bringing this forward as a conditional approval at this point in time. The development in general does include 5 proposed commercial retail buildings, one being a service center and a car wash, and then 3 other being general commercial retail units with the possibility of housing restaurants and the potential of a large format retailer that you can kind of see on the proposed building to the south in the site plan. As a note to council, this is within the settlement boundary. It is designated highway commercial in the official plan, and it is zoned a highway commercial exception C2-11 holding zone. So at this point, we are recommending that this be conditionally approved, as we are generally, as I noted, acceptable to site. At this point, we're just working on those off-site details. And I would also note that this particular application is further subject to review and approval of the Ministry of Transportation, being that it is within proximity of the connecting link, and as well as the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Parks due to the extension of servicing. So with that said, I am recommending that conditional site plan approval be granted for the lands, which are known as the Glens Shopping Center. And that council directs staff to prepare and execute a site plan agreement once all the conditions of the letter have been approved and ministry approvals have been received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Dan, questions or comments on the site plan in front of us? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Dan. So when I'm looking at the map of the actual plan, I'm looking at the 2 entrances going on to Main Street. Is that part of the MTO conditions? Because I'm just thinking about people coming into town, and we know they're not going 60, they're going 80, so I'm just concerned about those 2 entrances. And so is that part of the traffic study that's going to have? And the other question I have, and I don't know whether you can answer it, but it says they're going to relocate the town sign. Is that something somebody else is paying for, or are we paying for that?
Through the chair, I will answer the first question, and I might defer the second one to Jeff, if that's okay. So with respect to your first question, which is the transportation access basically to the site, they have prepared is it possible to get you to mute? You're getting feedback. Perfect. All right, there we go. I can hear myself speaking, and it's a little unnerving. So with respect to transportation, yeah, they have submitted a detailed transportation analysis and plan, which has been reviewed both by the municipality's engineer of record, that being Dillon Consulting in this case, as well. It has been reviewed by the Ministry of Transportation and has generally been accepted in both cases. What I would note is, as identified in the traffic study, there is a requirement to add 2 left-hand turn lanes off of Richmond and Main Street into the site. So there will be controlled access that are turning into the site to utilize it, knowing that traffic can still slip on either side.
Okay, you good with that? Okay, any other comments or questions regarding the site plan? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, Dan, what is a deep well waste disposal? What is that? I see it on the map, and I'm just curious of what those are. They're called deep well waste storage containers. There's quite a few of them there. I don't know what they are.
Through the chair to Councillor Westman. So the deep well container systems are basically a what would you call it? A more environmentally friendly type of waste management on site. So instead of, or opposed to having compactors as well as dumpster bins out and behind gates, in these cases they actually sink a PVC tube down into the ground into a big well, And there's a big bladder bag that kind of goes down into that, and all the garbage gets put into this bladder bag, and then Waste Management comes, takes the whole bag out with it, and puts a new bag in. The advantage is that, like I said, it doesn't take up as much space, and you can get a lot more waste in a particular well. And then secondly, it's a much more attractive version of Waste Management on site than your typical storage bins, as well as gates, which typically, I'm not sure if you've seen many, but they tend to get run down over time and hit by garbage trucks. So it's a much more attractive solution for Waste Management on.
You good, Councillor Westman? Anything else? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you. I'm wondering about sidewalks on the highway to the property. Is that a part of this, or whose responsibility is it to construct sidewalks?
Okay, who wants to talk sidewalks? Jeff?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I can address that. So sidewalks at this point are not part of this project. To jump to sidewalks and not follow the proper engineering of Main Street would be a little premature. So we'll have to address Main Street at a later point.
Okay, do you follow it?
I just have maybe different questions, if I may continue. The shared access easement with the lands to the south, the report mentions that they're designed to township standard in case the township wants to assume them as part of a future subdivision application. And I'm just curious, like, is that, as shown on the design, is that going to be sufficiently wide, a wide enough right-of-way for all, like, for that to be a future municipal roadway with utilities and everything?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, so the easement and the space on the easement will allow a public roadway to go in. The exact design of what's going in there right now is not a public roadway. So that if we do have to change it and upgrade it to public specifications, such as stormwater, there will have to be changes made in the future.
Okay, I'm good, thanks.
Councillor Regan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if I missed it, but I did just wanted an answer about the sign and who's paying for the moving of the sign. Can I ask Jeff?
Yep. And through the mayor, the sign is not part of this project. To move the sign, it will be the responsibility of the municipality.
And why is that? I guess that's my follow-up.
Right now, we don't know where the sign's going to go, so we don't really have the ability to put that on this project at this moment.
Right, because at this time, that's where it has to go with our agreement with MTO, correct? With the connecting link?
If I can take a stab at answering this one. The sign is where it is now because I think that's history. It's always been there. It's still within the connecting link. The connecting link actually starts at the, I'm going to call it the northernmost corner of this property. So I think to Jeff's point, what he's trying to say is we don't know exactly where we want to put the sign yet. I don't think it's not a big cost for us to move it. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we're not talking thousands of dollars here. We're talking some time on our staff's part. So it's not that big of an issue. Is that a correct comment, Jeff?
Okay, any other comments or questions on the site plan? I guess my only question, and I know that you can't answer this, Dan, but I'm going to ask it anyways. When it goes to MTO and Ministry of Environment for approval, do we have any idea what sort of timeline we're looking at and when that will come back?
Through the chair to the mayor. So MTO has actually given us preliminary approval at this point in time, so they're willing to move forward with the design that has been proposed for the offsite roadway improvements. It's just up to the developer to actually apply for their formal permit once they get a signed development agreement in place. With respect to the Ministry of Environment, that's a bit of an outlier. I'm not exactly sure how long that's going to take. We have been in discussions with the developer in this case who does believe they can get an expedited review. With that said, the township is still reviewing some of the offsite works that is being proposed at this point. So I don't think we're necessarily at the point where there's a final application being submitted to the ministry. So it may take a little bit more to get there, but rest assured, we certainly are putting a lot of hours into getting that approved and working collaboratively with the developer's engineer to move that forward.
Okay, thanks, appreciate that. If there isn't any other discussion, then we do have a motion in front of us that the conditional site plan approval be granted for the lands known as 315 Main Street, Lucan, owned by the Glens Shopping Center, Inc., care of Day Trayer, and the council direct staff to prepare and execute a site plan agreement once all conditions have been met and ministry approvals received. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Dan. Good to see you again. Okay, moving on to Public Works. Jeff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I have one report tonight, and I also have some verbal updates that I'll follow up with. So my first report is a request that came in for the building of a swim pond on township property. The request was brought in by the development Timber Ridge, which is being proposed to be built on east of Saintsbury line, just north of Kent Street. The property they have requested to build a swim pond on is the property, again, east of Saintsbury line, north of the Whitfield Drain. Currently, there is a swim pond on that property for Old Clover. Just a little bit of a background. The township did acquire this property in 2005 for the purpose of developing a regional swim facility in this area. The facility, I did mention, the facility does currently hold one pond, and it does service the Old Clover development just south of the Whitfield Drain. The developer has requested permission to construct another pond here. The proposal is being based on the Campanelli swim pond, which the developer built when they did the Ridge Crossing development. The Campanelli pond is designed to be a green space. It has a paved walking trail and landscape gardens around it. The recent master servicing study outlined the benefit of a regional swim facilities. It outlined a number of areas around the village that the municipality should be developing into regional swim facilities. It did point out that the township's forward planning when securing this property. A note that there is also additional development in this area that would use the stormwater control, and that the developer that has proposed this pond would build it to service both developments. The benefits of working with a regional swim facility is we're able to concentrate the ponds in one area instead of having smaller individual ponds distributed throughout the residential area. The main benefit of this is that in the future, when we do have to service or maintain these ponds, it is a much benefit to the taxpayer, because it is cheaper to do that way when you have it in one bigger pond, all concentrated. Part of this report, I did want to make sure I recognize that there is a financial benefit to the developer if this is approved. The developer would have to use land normally required to build the pond on in their development. By doing this, they're able to develop all their land into residential construction. In recognizing of this benefit, the developer is proposing to enhance the area around the pond, and that's why the proposal based on the Campanelli swim pond was put forth. I think it's one of the benefits that we get complimented on our town is the Campanelli swim pond and the use of the trail around it and even through the winter when we did keep those trails open. So there certainly is a benefit there developing a swim pond in that proposal as a green space. And then finally, I'd just like to point out to council that we did give a similar approval to the Asabo Field development for the use of the parkland for swim control. With this report, I do recommend that we move forward with this. I believe it's good for both sides of the table in this situation.
Okay. Thank you very much for that report, Jeff. And I would agree about the Campanelli Pond. I remember when it was first proposed, and I had reservations, but what they've done over there certainly is great, and they've shown how it can, enhance our community. So I would agree with what you said on that. Comments or questions on this report? Deputy Mayor Manders.
I just want to confirm, it does say in recognition of this benefit, the developer is proposing to enhance the land surrounding the swim facility there, walking trails, landscaping, but that is not in lieu of parkland or anything. That is because of the net benefit.
And through the mayor, that's correct.
Good.
This is over and above that.
Good. And also, I guess, just in case there's you never know, change of ownership as we've had before in lands in our community. Just, I don't know how it works. Obviously, the standard which is stated here, which I agree with the mayor, that is the standard that'll be there regardless of ownership of that land and, when that has to be done. And that's, I don't know, again, what kind of security you have for that, because that is quite, the land the taxpayers own is very valuable. They are getting a huge benefit, and I just don't know how staff protects themselves to ensure that that's done. So I assume you're doing a good job of that.
Yeah, and through the mayor, so by giving this approval, we'll bring forward the engineering on the pond itself. So we'll be able to show the trails, the landscaping in the engineering that will go into it prior to the development agreement. So we'll be able to list all that out before we sign the development agreement.
Anything else? Okay. And is that its own agreement on its own, or does that form part of the subdivision agreement?
Madam Mayor, that forms part of the subdivision, the development agreement. So right now, we're moving into the next stage. Dan will be bringing forward some more information on the development itself. But one of the stages we will move to is engineering, and that's where the pond will be developed in the engineering stage. And then once that's done, then we can move to the agreement stage.
And then, since we're talking about engineering, that's all a developer cost, even though it's on our land, that they will assume the cost of all the engineering of the pond and everything else that they want to do around it, right?
Yep, that's correct, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions or comments for Jeff? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, maybe for Jeff or for Paul, but I'm just wondering, with our movement towards connectivity and the trail system, how this works in with what we might be planning for the future. Is this all part of this?
Yeah, maybe I'll go first. So, and I don't want to get ahead, put the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, I should say.
I understood what you said.
Yeah.
I got you.
The idea here on the east side is to join up and we're working with the developers in the area to develop a trail system that should be able to connect right to Campanelli, the Campanelli swim pond. So then the goal here, when we're all said and done, is to have a trail system that can go from one swim pond to the other one.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Another benefit to this, just as Jeff had said, to develop that system, the benefit of these spaces and the connectivity, the potential connectivity, and the greening of these areas, we're able to work with the ABCA to do educational elements. They're actually quite happy with our progressive attitude towards this in our township, and the connectivity offers moments that they can connect with the school, with Wilberforce Public School, to potentially work towards, once all the COVID rules have kind of got them back to normal, being able to field trips. I know they're starting back into that again. They can go around our community and see what we've done and what the purpose is and why we've done them, and the benefits to, as Councillor Westman had said before, the watershed protection. All these things have a benefit there. And if we can use it for education, and we show developers are actually, quite keen on these kind of things. We have a lot of them have been approaching us about, where can they put things in, demonstration things, because I think going forward in the future, how, everything's moving in development and with the government, greening is a huge initiative. So if we can demonstrate that, it shows how great our community is, and I think there's benefit here to that.
Thank you very much, Paul, Jeff. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other comments for discussion? Just back to maintaining it, because it would be, I guess, we wouldn't assume responsibility for the swim pond until we assume responsibility for the subdivision. So how can we ensure that that the infrastructure that they're going to put in, that's going to make everybody want to use it, is going to be maintained to our standard? And because then, again, we won't be maintaining it until we assume it.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, that's a good question. So one of the things that we'll have to put in the agreement itself will outline the maintenance and the timetable on that maintenance for around the swim pond. So I think that's something that we can outline. Well, I know for sure we can outline in the development agreement, but to make sure that we catch all that in the agreement.
Thank you. One last call for comments, discussion. Okay, in front of us is a motion that we receive report number PW-08-2022, and that council approve an additional storm pond to be built on the township-owned property on Saintsbury that currently has the Old Clover Swim Pond. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Do you have anything else for us, Jeff?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So some interesting updates tonight. First of all, a couple of real quick ones. Street sweeping is finished for our town roads. We still have to do some of the urban or some of the rural intersections. Dust control is currently going on. That's pretty standard. At the 1st of May, we start dust control. A couple of the interesting things. We've started the sand salt storage shed. So we've got the start of the footings going in this week. So I would think in a couple of weeks there should be some impressive walls going up out there. So that's a good thing. We did have an open house for the Alice Street and Saintsbury line reconstruction. I think it went pretty successful. We had a good flow through late afternoon, early evening. And I just wanted to follow up in case anybody's asked. Anybody that did not show up, we will reach out to them because it is important on Alice Street to make sure that we do talk to everybody on that street. It is going to be an interesting construction project, and we want to make sure we talk to everybody. So just so if anybody's asked, we will be reaching out to anybody that didn't make the open house.
Follow-up, we did have a wastewater expansion meeting last week. The good news is our Class EA is basically ready to go into the ministry for approval, so that's really good news. That's right on schedule. The next step is the design stage, and I have asked Matt Pearson of BM Ross to give us an update on the timeline so we can have a better handle of what's going to happen over the next year to 2 years with the planned expansion. And that's all my updates for now.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jeff. Questions for Jeff? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just Jeff, sorry, what's the timeline from start to finish on Alice?
Maybe we will start on Saintsbury first, and it will start, we're thinking the mid-June. We'll work on Saintsbury because we don't want to close both roads. We don't want to have construction on both roads. So once the contractor gets far enough on Saintsbury and can move on to Alice, then they will. And we're looking at that at probably sometime in August, mid-August. It means during September or the start of the school year, Alice will have construction on it. I have assured and talked to the contractor that we will permit, traffic to go down it, that we're not going to totally close Alice, but it will be closed to local traffic only. And then finish up will be into October.
Okay, Paul, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. To begin, I'll begin with my report regarding the pool. So as council knows, as business arising, staff was instructed to bring forward a report and a proposal on how we could improve and renew and upgrade our facility, as well as look at accessibility and really increase the lifespan to our pool. I know this is something that council and the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee have been big supporters of seeing what we could do, especially while lending rates were good. So forward in front of you, I have submitted with this report the full proposed scope of this project, including the renewing of our pool through the Mirtha Renovaction Program, as well as adding an accessible ramp, and also the shallow of the deep end. I won't go through every point in the scope of work, but just to see what we would be getting for our dollar amount. As part of this was accessibility was a key factor of this discussion, since we are improving our facility. I did attend a meeting of the Accessibility Advisory Committee of the County of Middlesex, and they were quite supportive of our efforts to increase our community center's accessibility as well as the pool. So we asked them for comments regarding this design that was put forward from Hollandia, and they were very supportive of it. One comment had been to, in the future, maybe if someone needed lift assist, to maybe further down the road look for funding for additional lifts. However, it was pointed out that most people would have aquatic equipment to already help them, and the ramp would be quite beneficial to that, as well as the positive of the ramp over a lift is the fact that some people are not, don't like to let their accessibility needs be made public. So this allows them access to our facility without publicly announcing to the world what their accessibility needs are. As also to follow up, staff was instructed to look at similar or older pools that have had this design in the Canadian environment, as we do know Mirtha is developed in Italy. And it's been made note that in Calgary, the first one that they installed in 1998 actually still has its original liner. I did reach out to them. Unfortunately, the way that they operate their pools out there, that the company that takes care of it, they're not open for the year yet, so there's no one available for comment. I did, however, include in the report a very recent picture from their Instagram about opening the pool in 2021, and if that's the same pool in 1998, I think that's a very positive reflection of how it holds up. As well, I reached out to the Lebovic campus in Vaughan. I have not heard back from theirs, but theirs was in 2011. And they, as far as I know, they haven't had significant issues after talking with Mirtha. The other people were in Tweed. They had one in 2009. And as of note, they are just now this year looking at replacing their membrane. So that's a very good lifespan that is over the warranted lifespan of the membrane. So that's a pretty good look at how long it lasts. I would recommend then, looking at that lifespan, that for when we get into asset management, if we go forward with this project, that's something we should consider within that 12 to 15 year period to put away for. It's about $200,000, just so everyone's aware. I did also reach back out to Spreets to follow up with some questions at the last meeting about the 2017 pool proposal. I have included that design in our report. It was, in 2017, about $2.2 million, as well as a portion of the $620,000 site work and demolition being included as part of that pricing. They did advise, normally they would account for 10% a year. However, from what they've seen with COVID, it would be more likely higher than that. And based upon that, they thought it would be, $3.4 to $4.4 million today to do that design. So with that, we have identified the need and put forward through Treasury for $1.5 million in the infrastructure loan program, as well as we are looking actively into grant funding options because there are often some for accessibility, as well as potentially the energy savings that this could have by making that deep end shallower, as well as, it does have that insulation rating that the concrete does not have, as well as the water waste and loss that we have. So there is a possibility there. So we're actively looking at that, see what's out there to see if we can apply that towards this as well. With that, I would open the floor to council for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Paul, comments, questions, clarifications? Councillor Regan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Am I allowed to just speak as a chair of PRAC at this time? No? So, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I know that this has been a discussion for about 5 years, and the members of PRAC, for the most part, are the same. And every time we have this discussion, there's always this massive amount of support in our community for this, for the decision, of course, to maintain that pool, to upgrade the pool, and to move that forward. There's many, many discussions. So I know the community is very excited about that, and the PRAC committee represents a wide variety of people in our community, most of them who are very involved in the community. So, and I appreciate the revised report, Paul. I feel much more comfortable with that, and I totally support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from council? You see, now look what you've started. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just what is the term of that loan again that we're going to be looking at? Or the longest length of time, regardless of, I guess, whether you select it or not.
I
But
think what I had in the proposal, we're not locked into debenture, and we still haven't been approved yet for the loan itself.
Right.
But I think in the plan, when I put in the ARL, the payback, I used 20 years.
Okay.
25 years, something you wanted with the lifespan of the pool with what we want to use. We don't want to extend the loan over longer than that, just based on your estimated useful life of that.
Right. And that, just in case we get asked in the community, and their interest rate, which is unique, is good for the full term of the loan, for the full 20 years or 25, correct? Depending on what we select?
Correct. So once we go into debenture, you'd be locked into that rate for the full term.
Yeah, no, it is one thing being on council, as long as I have that, certainly I've never had a conversation with anyone to decommission that asset. That is one thing. If anything, there's been comments on, when we couldn't find lifeguards, they were disappointed in it not running. And like I say, we've got it. I think this is a great solution. It's not a Band-Aid. I just, you know what, unless there's an appetite to decommission that asset, I think we proceed myself, so.
Thank you for that. Paul?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. If I may as well, I think it's important for the community who are watching and paying attention to decommission an asset like that isn't free. It's quite substantial cost to fill in a pool. So I think that's important to be considered, that we probably wouldn't be that far off. I mean, it wouldn't be $1 million, but it would be a substantial amount of money.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you. Just a question, if this is approved today, what's the construction timeline for this project?
They've estimated that they would either start in fall or spring, but it would be intended to be open and available for the 2023 season.
Okay, and the reason I ask, I'm just wondering how that would coordinate with the current arena or the community center renovations, and how those two projects would be separated from a sort of liability constructor issue standpoint.
And I think that's why we were looking at the spring for completion, because that makes it a lot simpler liability-wise. Otherwise, we'd have to get into very defined separations in the construction zones for sure.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we do have a motion in front of us. Where is it? That report number PR-06-2022 be received, and that council award the pool project to Hollandia Pools and Spa for $1,250,500, and that is plus HST. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for that, Paul. I think that the community will be quite excited about this investment. As the Deputy Mayor said, I'm like him. I have never heard anybody say decommission the pool. So what are you going to do to fix it? So I think everybody should be happy by this decision. Do you have anything else for us, Paul?
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just so council's aware, we have the multipurpose court tender, the RFP is out currently. It will be opened and received on May 17th at 4 p.m. As well as we do have the tender for the change room, washroom portion of the soccer fields out for May 31st.
Okay, economic development. No, nothing from Lisa. Councillor comments. Councillor Regan.
Madam Mayor, I just would need to seek clarification, if I can, from the Deputy Mayor's motion for the next meeting.
I'm going to make it coming up.
Is he, all right, no, I just wanted clarification. I'll wait.
Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I think everybody's probably aware that there'll be families in our community who will be hosting folks from the Ukraine. And I'm hearing little bits and pieces about arrival times and the makeup of some of these families, and it's pretty exciting for our community to be able to host these families. And as it stands right now, there's a potential for, I think, 4 families to be coming to Granton alone. And I know there's others that'll be coming into the Lucan area as well. So it's again, it's another point of pride that we as a community are going to be able to host these families and give them a safe and nurturing place to live, at least for the next couple of years, while things hopefully settle down over there. I'm also looking forward to meeting some of these families and introducing them to our community and some of the amenities that we can be proud of, including the community center and the library and the township office. So as they come in, I'll get as much information as I can, pass it on to council and staff, and maybe we can find a way to welcome them formally and properly. So that'd be good. Thanks.
Great. Appreciate that, Alex. Any other councillor comments? Nothing? Okay. We don't have any changes to budget. And Deputy Mayor Manders, did you want to speak to your notice of motion?
Yeah, I just want to say it is my intention to submit to the clerk a notice of motion at the May 17th meeting to reconsider last meeting's motion where instructions were given to staff to make preparations for a public meeting. I'll prepare that at the meeting.
Great, thank you very much. On to motions and accounts. Before we get into it, we do have a bylaw that we discussed at our last meeting. It's the Hill of Dreams bylaw, and there was an administration error. And Ron, did you want to just speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So council actually gave third reading to that bylaw where there was never first and second reading given to the bylaw. So it kind of, it's not really a valid bylaw. So what I did was contact the county clerk, who's a lawyer, and I said, how do we proceed based on this? Because I don't know that we've ever done that before. And she said the best way to do that would be to simply have council rescind the previous motion from the last meeting and then repass the bylaw. And then Tina will also send out the notice of passing again for the zoning bylaw. So you have to erase what you already did, even though it wasn't really valid because there wasn't 3 proper readings given to it. So you erase what you did erroneously and then you start back at the beginning, which is the bylaw, I believe it's 201-2022. That's scheduled for passage tonight.
Okay, any questions or clarification on that? Okay, then we'll go right into the motions. So the first one in front of us is that council receives, and this is a report from the last council meeting with regards to the Bandshell project. Just as a reminder, so that council receives report number EDC-04-2022 as presented at the April 19th, 2022 meeting for information and directs staff to proceed with the engineering for the proposed 2023 Bandshell project at Market Street Park. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. Next motion is that council rescinds the following motion, number 2022-106, passed on April 19th, 2022, and that if no one cares to speak to bylaw.
So that was the actual motion that was made at the previous meeting.
Okay, so what am I doing here?
You can just, that's the following
It's-
motion, you don't have to read it.
I don't have to read this. Okay, gotcha. So, okay, that's where I was confused. Okay, I'll be happy to put this one to bed. So the motion is that council rescinds the following motion, number 2022-106, passed on April 19th, 2022. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All in favor? That's carried. And then the bylaws in front of us, we've got 3 of them. Bylaw 201-2022, and that's to amend the Lucan Biddulph Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw. That's the Hill of Dreams Farm. Bylaw 22-2022, to provide for the adoption of estimates and setting the tax rates, and to further provide for penalty and interest in default therefore for 2022. And Bylaw 23-2022, to adopt and confirm all actions and proceedings of the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph. So the motion in front of us that if no one cares to speak to Bylaw 201-2022 and Bylaws 22-2022 through 23-2022 inclusive on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. Oh, sorry about that. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 9 minutes after 8. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor?